If you'd like to ask Catholic Archbishop a question, please raise your hand.
Your Grace, why did you choose to become a bishop?
Well, there's kind of a short answer and a long answer. I'll give you the short answer first. I didn't choose to become a bishop. In our church, you can choose to become a priest, or you can work out in your own heart, I guess, that you think God's asking you to be a priest. So you kind of put your hand up and then you go through all the training and you eventually become a priest. But you can't really volunteer to be a bishop. In fact, if you volunteered to be a bishop, your name would go right to the bottom of the list. What happens is that when the church needs a new bishop, then there's a whole process of consultation that goes on, and eventually a whole string of names end up with an archbishop in Canberra who's called the nuncio. He's the Pope's kind of diplomatic representative here in Australia. He puts those names together, sends them over to Rome. There's a group of bishops who go through all of the documents, all of the information. They come up with 3 names, and they put them in order, and they send them to the Pope. And then I suppose over his morning cup of coffee, he goes through the list and decides which one he's going to choose, and he makes the final choice. So it's not a case of choosing to be a bishop, it's a case of responding yes or no when the Pope asks you.
Oh, so, cool.
Thanks.
All right, we'll go on.
Good morning, Archbishop. My name is Kimberly. I was just wondering if you could share with us your views on the Royal Commission that's operating currently.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. It's a very difficult topic, as everybody knows. The Royal Commission is looking into the sexual abuse of young people in institutions around the country, and of course one of those institutions is our own church, which is a very shameful thing to have to admit, but it's true. The first thing I would say is that the Royal Commission is actually a bit of a gift to, I think, not just the church, but to the whole country. Because as we know, we in our own church community have a very bad history in this area, and unfortunately we're not the only ones. So there's a big problem in this area, and I think the only way we could have hoped to deal with it, not just as a church, but as a society, is through something like a Royal Commission. So the important thing for us is to be very open, very honest, not hide anything, be prepared to admit, as I think we're learning to do, just how badly some of our leaders and some of our clergy and religious and church workers have failed in the past. So there's one part of it is to be open and honest and upfront about the terrible things that happened in the past, to do everything we can to help people who've suffered in this way to put their lives back together. And the other thing is to say to ourselves, and it's a job for certainly people like the bishops, but for every member of the Catholic community, to say to ourselves, whatever we have to do to make sure it never happens again, that's what we've got to do. So I'm glad you've asked the question, because it gives me a chance to say to everybody, we have a bad history, but we can have a very positive future if we all work together on this. So thanks, Kimberly, wasn't it, for the question. Good on you.
Yeah, as I was saying, I'm Dane. How long was your training to become an archbishop?
Well, as I was saying to the earlier question, that the question about being a bishop fits into the question about being a priest. So when I was about 22 or 23, I think it was, I made the decision I wanted to be a priest. And because I also wanted to be a teacher, I joined a religious order where the priests and the brothers teach and do other things, but also teach. So I joined an order called the Salesians of St. John Bosco. So it's 10 years training from when you start to when you get to be a priest. So it was 10 years training to be a priest. And during that time I did my teacher training as well. Then I taught for a while. I was an RE coordinator in a big boys' school in Melbourne, so all boys, no girls, but about the same size as Irene McCormack College is. So I did that for a number of years, and then I was sent overseas to do some further training in Rome. So I spent 2 years in Rome doing a kind of a master's degree in theology. And then I came back to Australia, and since then, until I became a bishop, I was teaching theology to young people and lots of other people too who were training to be priests. And then when I became a bishop, you'd think if took you 10 years to be a priest or to train to be a priest, you probably need 20 years to train to be a bishop. Well, Bishop Don could tell the same story. We got a week. We were sent to Rome, where all the men who'd been appointed as bishops in the last 12 months, they go to Rome for a week, have a couple of meetings with the Pope, have lots of lectures about what it is to be a bishop, and you're supposed to come home after that knowing all about it. We used to call it baby bishop school. So Bishop Don went to baby bishop school before I did, because he's been a bishop longer than me. But in a way, Kane, it's ongoing. You know, every day is like a new part of the training, because you learn new things. And yeah, great question though. Thank you. Your turn.
Your Grace, how long have you been a Archbishop for?
I became the Archbishop here in March of 2000 and... Was it March? I think it was March 2012. So 2 years as the Archbishop here in Perth. And before that I was 5 years as an auxiliary bishop in Melbourne. So 7 years as a bishop.
I got one here.
What's the highest amount of LifeLink money that you've ever raised?
Oh, that's a good... What's your name?
Jacob.
Jacob. It's a good question, Jacob. I don't know the answer to that. Perhaps Mr. Mendez might know the answer to that. 89,000. Okay, almost 90,000, Jacob, is the most we've raised in 1 year.
Okay.
From LifeLink Day, yes.
Your Grace, what are your thoughts on what the Pope has said about gay rights and hell?
I think the Pope, he's making it very clear, I think, that everybody, no matter their situation, everybody deserves to be treated with dignity and with respect. Lots of people have different views about lots of different perspectives on Christian morality and all of those kinds of things. And certainly Pope Francis, at least so far, and I can't see it happening in the future, hasn't shown any desire to change the Church's teaching, and as Pope he really can't do that. But what he is saying to us is that the way we go about dealing with people, and whether it's people who are gay or whether it's people who are in all sorts of situations that we as Catholics might find difficult, what the Pope is telling us is that we have to treat everybody with dignity and with respect. Now, we've always known it, but Pope Francis seems to have the knack of putting it front and centre for us. It's one of the reasons why he's such a great gift, I think, both to the Church and to the world.
Your Grace, do you believe this is your, have you ever achieved your true purpose and meaning in life?
I think I'm in the process of achieving my true purpose in life. It's a really good question. It's actually a great question, isn't it? Particularly for those of you here who are in the senior classes at Irene McCormick, or anybody else listening in the last few years at secondary school. One of the things that we have to do, each one of us, I think, is kind of develop the habit of reading our hearts to work out what really matters to us. As I said when I was talking to you from up on the podium, you know, reaching out and helping others, for example, is not just the right thing to do. It's actually the thing that when we get in touch with the best part of ourselves is the thing that we actually want to do. So I think getting in touch with your heart is really a very important part of the process of achieving your true purpose in life, because that's where God works. That's where you'll find out what God's wanting. And for us as Christians, in the end, the path to happiness, fulfillment, to having the kind of life we want to have, is tied up with us working out where God's leading us. And in my case, and I must say it took me a while, as I said, I was 22 or 23 before I worked out that I wanted to be a priest, but in my case, that's how it was for me. I was going to teachers' college at the time. I had a girlfriend. You know, everybody presumed that my future would look like one thing, and it turned out that God wanted me to do something else. So I think it is, and that has to happen every day. We keep reading our hearts. What's God asking of me today? Where's God leading me today? And that'll be different for every single one of us. You know, there's no one answer to that question. Each person has to work the answer out for him or herself. But that's what the real purpose in life is, and that's what I'm kind of trying to do each day. So, yeah. I think there's a question up the front here too, we might take in a minute.
Your Grace.
Yes.
Is there any more things that we can do to help LifeLink? Any more?
Well, it's actually a bit of a hard question for me to answer because I don't probably know your school community as well as you guys do. So I think one of the best things you could do, maybe in your own class or amongst your own friends or in whatever other ways in which the college is structured, to ask that question of each other. What are the kinds of things that we could do that would help us to raise some money, that we would enjoy doing, that would be enjoyable, exciting, a bit of fun, not cause any trouble for anybody else, but would also enable people to contribute. So I'm not trying to avoid the question, but I think it's probably a question you and your friends and you know, the guys in your class, it's a question you probably have to ask and answer for yourselves and sort of build on what the college has done in the past. Look at what happened last year. What worked, what didn't work, what could we try this year that might be a bit different? So, yeah. Sorry, it's not exactly the answer, but it's the best I can come up with.
Good morning, Your Grace.
Good
I'm
morning.
Georgia Ridley and I'm from Brighton Catholic Primary School, and I would like to ask you this.
Yes.
Have you ever met the recent Pope? And if you have, what did you think of him?
Well, the answer is very short because no, I haven't. The closest I got to the new Pope was when Bishop Don and I went to Brazil last year for World Youth Day. And of course, Pope Francis came to Brazil for World Youth Day. But Bishop Don and I were just two people among, 6 million people who were there. And to be really honest with you, I think the Pope, when he was in Brazil, was much more interested in meeting the young people than he was in meeting the bishops. So I haven't met him. I did meet Pope Benedict 3 or 4 times, and I also met Pope John Paul II once, I think. But no, I haven't met Pope Francis. But from what I see on TV and reading his stuff, I think he's a very impressive man. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thanks, Georgia.
Your Grace.
Oh.
And do you think in the future there might be a woman priest or a woman bishop?
I don't think so. This is a question that's been debated in the church for a long time, and I know that other Christian traditions, like the Anglican Church, have a different point of view to us on this. It's a bit of a complicated question, but in the end, and I hope this doesn't sound like I'm avoiding the question, I don't mean to, but in the end, what's happened is that over a long period of time, and this question's come up in the church, you know, fairly regularly over the last 2,000 years. And every time it's come up in a different historical context, a different social context. But each time, in all those different contexts, as the church has thought about it and researched it and studied it, they've come to the conviction, which we can't always understand all that well, but they've come to the conviction that in God's plan, the way that the Catholic Church looks at this is the way God wants us to. Now, who knows what will happen in the future, but my instinct is telling me that the church has looked at it so often and gone into it in so much detail that it's got to a stage where it's pretty convinced that this is God's plan for the church. Why? We're not 100% sure. So there's a lot of work still to be done to understand what's the meaning behind this rather strange teaching, certainly strange to many people that only men can be priests. What's behind all of that? Now, we're not quite sure of the answer to that yet. But in the end, the church's task is to be faithful to what it believes Jesus is asking of it. And at the moment, that's our conviction. So I can't see it changing. But I'm not the Pope, so who knows?
Okay, well, last question.
Hello, I'm Corey. I'm from Brighton Catholic Primary School, and I would want to ask, have you ever thought that you would become an Australian Pope?
Oh, Corey, that's a great question. I've never thought about it, no. To become the Pope, I'd probably first have to become a cardinal, and we've already got a cardinal, an Australian cardinal, Cardinal Pell. And the next cardinal in Australia is probably going to be whoever the new Archbishop of Sydney is, and that won't be me. So I think the chances are pretty slim. And I must say, Corey, that when I became a priest, my brother and sister-in-law thought that was, one part of them thought that was terrific, but my sister teaches in a Catholic school in Melbourne, and she thought it might be a bit of pressure having a brother-in-law who was a priest. And then when I became a bishop, she thought it was even worse. So could you imagine what she'd say if I became the Pope? So I think if I became the Pope, my family wouldn't even let me in the front door anymore. So, but I'm not making light of the question. There are many people around probably 4,000 or 5,000 bishops, Bishop Don, around the world. So the chances of one from Australia becoming Pope are pretty slim.
Yeah, awesome.
But if I do, I'll invite you to the celebrations in Rome.
Cool.
I know. Good on you, Corey. Thanks.
I would now like to thank the Archbishop for his beautiful responses and introduce our college principal, Mr. Robert Marshall, to conclude the proceedings.
Your Grace, Archbishop Costello, certainly an Archbishop for the people of Perth, and you've demonstrated that this morning with the question and answer session. So once again, thank you very much for that. Also, Bishop Don, Ms Deborah Sayce from the CEO, invited guests, our great students and staff, are welcome to you all this morning. Today, we have been privileged as a school community to be host of this special event for the launch of 2014 LifeLink Day by Archbishop Timothy Costello. The privilege is not only to host this ceremony, but more so to recognise the efforts of students in schools who pray for and support people in our community who do not experience the same comforts and opportunities as most in our city enjoy. Today, we are focused on people who are homeless and lonely, those who suffer the traumas of domestic violence, people addicted to alcohol and other drugs, and also to the members of their families who suffer with them, people who live each day with hearing impairments, intellectual or physical disabilities, or mental illness. We also too think about our Aboriginal people and migrants in our community seeking accommodation and employment and facing other challenges. We also too pray and give thanks for all the volunteers and paid staff of LifeLink agencies for their compassionate work and support of these people who are in need. Thank you to all who have contributed to the fundraisers and other appeals that support the LifeLink agencies, and we encourage you to continue with this. I am sure that Irene McCormack's sister and brother, Bernadette and John, who are with us today, are very proud of our school community, which is inspired by Sister Irene's spirit of joy to serve the needs of others, to pick up the call of those who are suffering, and have the heart and courage to reach out and help. We also remember that Wednesday, the 21st of May, was the anniversary of Sister Irene's death in Peru in 1991. On behalf of the Irene McCormack Catholic College community, could you please join with me in thanking Bernadette and John for being here today. I wish to thank all our other guests who have joined us today. Mr John Quigley, great support, MP for Butler, who is a great supporter of schools in this area. Councillor Glenys Parker from the City of Wanneroo. Father Rainier from St Andrews. the representatives from our neighbouring schools, Mr Warren Smith and the students from St Andrews Catholic College, Miss Fiona Christie and the students of Brighton Catholic Primary School, Mr Barry Rose and the students from our neighbours at Butler College, the members of the Archdiocese staff, Mr James Parker and Mrs Kerry Carter, and our other college board members. Thank you to you all for being here today. We pay tribute to those who have worked to organise today's ceremony, and particularly to the LifeLink manager, Mr Brett Mendez, and Mr John Swindells, our college campus ministry coordinator, who have undertaken the planning and organisation. I think they deserve a big round of applause for their efforts. It is with a sense of pride that I thank all of our Irene McCormack Catholic College staff and students who have assisted with the setup for the ceremony, the music, the video presentation, catering for morning tea, and to our office and ground staff who work so enthusiastically behind the scenes for setting up. I'd love to have been able to mention you all by name. Thank you very much for your efforts. And if you can please keep your applause so that we can show our appreciation to our official guests, Archbishop Costello, Bishop Sproxton and Miss Deborah Sayce, for their presentations this morning. Your Grace, on behalf of all the members of the Irene McCormack Catholic College community, thank you for honouring us with the Spirit of LifeLink Award. It is recognition of the excellent efforts of our staff, the students and their families, and offers encouragement for us to do more for the Catholic welfare agencies supported by the LifeLink appeal. And to conclude, I invite our college captains, Hayley and Tom, to present you with a gift for the 2014 LifeLink appeal from our college community. This is the proceeds from our Irene McCormack Day held earlier this month. Tom and Hayley, please present a little gift to the Archbishop. Thank you to you all, and God bless you.